Terima kasih Prof.
Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Muhammad Shukry bin Sanuddin, a PhD scholar from Faculty of Civil Engineering and Built Environment, UTSM, and also the President of Graduate Student Association, GSA, UTSM, with my friend Sunia Rohana, a PhD scholar from Faculty of Technology Management and Business, and also the Vice President of Graduate Student Association, GSA, UTSM, will become the moderator for today's session. Welcome to our webinar entitled Common Question Asked During the Viva Voce, Tips and Tricks to Tackle Them. This webinar was conducted by our two honorable speakers, Associate Professor IR Dr. Muhammad Shukry Abdul Majid, and also Professor Dr. Aminul Islam from UniMAP Perlis. This webinar was organized by Center of Graduate Studies, CGS, and also Graduate Student Association, GSA, in collaboration with UTSM Global Society and several universities and societies such as UniMAP, ASPEN UKM, UTM, UTP, UUM, IIUM, UTA, and our first collaboration with George Foundation and also International University Bangladesh, DIU. I would like to thank to this university and society for supporting us in conducting this webinar. For your information, we had received more than 1,200 participants registered in this webinar, over than 25 countries such as Pakistan, India, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Iran, Turkey, Greece, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Ghana, Cambodia, Thailand, Somalia, Yemeni, Maldives, and etc. Thank you for joining our program for today. We really appreciate it. Before the webinar begins, I would like to remind to all participants to mute your microphone during the session. If you have any question, you can write it in the chat box or turn on your speaker during the Q&A session. Please don't forget to fill the feedback form to get your e-certificate. The link will be given 30 minutes before the session ends. Okay, for our first speaker today, we have Associate Professor IR Dr. Muhammad Shukry Abdul Majid. He is the Dean of Faculty of Mechanical Engineering Technology, University Malaysia Perlis. He also had well-published and awarding academic and research. He had produced 6 PhD and 16 master graduate students. He also awarded with Professional Engineering from Board of Engineers Malaysia and Chartered Engineer from Engineering Council, United Kingdom. Without further delay, I would like to pass this session to our first speaker, Associate Professor IR Dr. Muhammad Shukry Abdul Majid, to convey his presentation. With that, please welcome Associate Professor. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon to all. Let me share you. Can I share the slides? Okay. Can anybody see my slides? Is it visible?
Yes, visible.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Alhamdulillah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, today, my name is Muhammad Shukry Abdul Majid. I'm from University Malaysia Perlis. So this evening, I'll be sharing you guys some like the chairperson just mentioned just now, maybe tips and do's and don'ts in facing your PhD Viva or Master Viva. Okay, first of all, just a quick background of my background, my study, my professional qualifications, my publications, and my students as well as my research interests. Okay. So my experience relating to the supervising postgraduate students, So far, we under my group or my supervisory team, currently we have supervised total of 41 students, 16 PhD and 25 master students. We have completed 23 students so far. 14 of those is myself as a main supervisor. This is my publications profile. This is my group scholar, as well as my Scopus profile. Okay, so today the talk line we will little bit on what is the Viva Voce, preparation for Viva, tips, do's and don'ts for postgraduates. Maybe we go through a little bit on common mistakes that we normally see in Viva sessions as well, and then we go through some questions or general questions or maybe specific questions relating to the engineering and technical Viva sessions. Okay, what is Viva Voce? Basically, as many of us probably know, is basically a oral part of the examination of thesis. Basically, we do all the research. We want to report the study, so we put into a writing, and then we have an oral assessment of the report. So why Viva? Basically, we want to examine the candidate knowledge of the research that has been conducted for the past 2-3 years. Want to see what is the quality of the research being produced, as well as the examiner want to clarify some queries or some points that have been raised in the thesis, as well as for the students to defend their study. Some country like Australia, they just you just need to submit the thesis. There's no Viva, so you need to make sure the thesis is up to the scratch because you don't have the chance or the opportunity to defend your work. But in most countries, we have the chance to defend our work. So that's a good thing with having a Viva. So at the same time, also, it assists us in terms of getting published the paper rather than just simply a thesis where it will end up in the shelf. And finally, to provide evidence to help the examiners to arrive at the judgment of the thesis whether the work is being done very good. And finally, you want to make sure that the thesis is not plagiarized, it's not copied. Nowadays, there's a lot of copy and paste and things like that. So it's just basically the Viva Voce is a session a discussion session to ensure that the work is sound and is a valid work. Okay, so a quick one on the preparation for the Viva. I think many of the students or colleagues that have gone through the Viva session knows that before we go to the Viva, we need to prepare ourselves. First and foremost, we need to read the thesis from front to back. We need to make sure that everything that we put in the thesis is something that we are well aware and we can explain. Don't put anything in the thesis, something that you cannot explain. Next is don't over prepare. Think about the potential questions. We go to the potential question later on. Talk to the people who have passed the Viva. Just to get input how the Viva sessions is how to be conducted. Arrange a mock Viva with your supervisor or the supervisory team. Just to get the feel of having a Viva. Knows your examiners. Try to search your examiners' interests, their work, their past work, their paper publication, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I think for most of us, Viva could be something that you can enjoy later. It could be frightening, but at the end of it, if you are well prepared, I think it can be something that one experience that you can surely can remember for a lifetime. Okay, just a quick tips, do's and don'ts for colleagues out there. Basically, do remember that when you enter a Viva session, basically you are the expert of the subject matters. You did your work, you research for the last 2, 3, 4 years. So basically, you should be the expert in the subject matters in the room. So try to be calm, and uh, you, uh, you should be able to handle the Viva session quite well. Do enjoy the examiners. Normally, the examiner will start with the warm-up questions, just to get you into the groove, just to get into the mode of the sessions. Like how you do you have any problems, early problem with the project and things like that. So enjoy the earlier questions, because that could set up the mood for the Viva. Do know when to be quiet. See, this is one thing some of the students or some of the candidates need to understand, or need to study, need to learn. You need to know where time you need to be able to quiet and accept the comments from the examiner, rather than to be aggressive or defensive on some of the points. Do read through the thesis again before the Viva session. Do ask clarification. This is also very important. Some students, some candidates, don't understand the questions. So it's fine for the students or the candidates to go ahead and ask for clarification if you don't understand the questions. And lastly is to be confident when facing the Viva. A few don't fall into a trap of thinking criticism is especially personal or unkind, and being defensive. Don't respond to question along with the like everything is in the thesis. You kind of indicate or initiate to the examiners to look up in the thesis. Don't underestimate the Viva as merely formality. You need to make sure that you handle the Viva professionally. You need to be able to answer the question technically, rather than colloquial. Sometimes it can be too laid back, so it doesn't look like a proper assessment. So no need to read too much. Okay. So common mistakes is since I think the last 10 years I've been uh, attending a Viva session, and then as well as chairing a Viva sessions. I've seen a lot of common mistakes that maybe some students could learn before they attend the Viva sessions. One of the most common you see, students tend to whenever they have their slides, they tend to read the slides without really facing the examiners. So better to have a very good interaction with the examiners, eye contact, so that don't just facing the slides and just read the slides. Badly prepared slides. This is another problem sometimes, because the slides do not contain some good information from the work. Presentation is not focused. Sometimes the students or the candidates talk too softly, or sometimes when they getting a bit nervous or anxious, they talk too fast. Then you're missing all the points, all the key points that you need to highlight of your work. Presentation is too long. So normally for master Viva Voce is only about 15 to 20 minutes. For PhD, try to keep it within 25 to half an hour. So do not drag the presentation up to 45 minutes, because the examiners, when they come to the Viva session, they have read your thesis. So what they wanted is they want to validate your understanding of the work. The presentation is merely to just to set up the mode and to make sure that you'll be able to deliver your presentation. Then they can proceed with the assessment later. But it's not meant to like the 45-minute or 1 hour presentation. So presentations need to be a very good flow. Sometimes there's a language problems. The student also, the candidate also, sometimes the presentation can be monotonous. So these are the things that normally you see in the Viva, the mistake you see in the Viva session presentation. Common mistake during the Q&A. So I've seen a few times when the students or the candidates would say that the supervisor asked me to do this and that. So try to avoid that, because basically the research that you presented, basically your own. Your supervisor is there to just to supervise the work. Basically, you need to take responsibility for your work. You are accountable for your work. So everything that will put into assessment basically is your own. So you cannot just say that you don't know why you do this and that because of your supervisor asked you to do this. So try not to argue or be defensive during the Q&A. Try to be in the discussion mode rather than to be defensive. Do not answer a long question with yes or no. So need to be more technical. Need to discuss the point. Need to defend your work technically, and try to be not to being evasive. Try to run away from the question basically. And okay, just a favorite question to ask. Again, try to remember that when you in your Viva session, as I said earlier, you are the boss. You are the expert in the room because you have done the work for the last 2, 3 years, 4 years. So you're supposed to be the expert. And the examiners and supervisors in there just merely to validate your work. So the examiner will ask you to normally the examiner will ask you to introduce your work. Maybe you can please please tell us about your PhD work in maybe 3 minutes or 5 minutes, for example. So this is more general question that you would expect to kickstart the Viva session. So so basically, and these are some of the general question that they would ask the candidates, whether whether the candidate is coming from the engineering or technical backgrounds or social sciences. So basically, in a sentence, what is your research? So the student or the candidate needs to be able to explain their research in a nutshell. What is the main contribution of your study? How your findings is applied to the benefit of society? These are the kind of questions they just want to see your response. When you do a PhD, basically it's a doctor of philosophy. This is the philosophical part of the study. They want you to be able to engage and argue or discuss your point articulately. Okay, how would your finding fit with the or contradict with the rest of the literature in the field? How your study fit into the narrative of the work in the field? What have you learned from the process of doing your PhD, things like that. And finally, why, after spending all the 3 years, 4 years, why you are merit to be awarded a PhD. So these are kind of questions, not really into the technical part of a PhD, but rather they want to gauge your ability to discuss. They want to see your growth as the scholars. How would you be able to discuss scholarly things like that? So these basically you find this line of question in all PhD Viva. It's not just engineering, but in many all fields. So now I would like to just go through a little bit on the favorite question you want you to expect in engineering or sciences field. So as you would know, in engineering or in sciences technical study, you start with your introductions, chapter 1, chapter 2, you have all these, and chapter 1 you have all these problem statements, all these scope of studies and things like that. So basically, when you go for your Viva Voce, definitely first thing they will ask you, one of the sure thing that they will ask you is about your problem statements. They would like you to elaborate the problem statements that you written in your thesis, whether you understand, whether you are clear with the problem statement, because the problem statement is the one that would basically shape your work. From the problem statement, then you devise your objective, your scopes and everything, and your result and your conclusion. So most of the time in any technical or engineering, Viva Voce, the examiner will focus on the problem statements in chapter 1, because once you have a clear problem statements, then you can devise you can shape your research more clearly. And then they would sometimes from and then they would ask you about the limitation of your work. This also can be the scope, because if you don't see or don't have a clear scope, then the study would not end. They want you to know the scope of your study, what is the limitations of your work. If you have a modeling, what sort of the modeling that you expect to do, and the limits of the model and things like that. So you need to know what is the limits of your work. Next is normally they will ask you about the literature review, the summary of the literature review. They want you to discuss what kind of problem that you encountered during the research, or during when you devise the methodology that you performed. Then this is more technical. They will ask you what kind of tolerance involved, how many replicates tested, what sort of standards that you use in terms of the testing and things like that. So you need to be able to know all this. How many, for example, you do testing, how many samples? If you say certain numbers, whether that numbers in line with the certain standards that you should follows and things like that. And then this is also very important. Some researchers, or when they went to the Viva, they forgot about calibrations. For example, sensors, or when they do the test, when they gathered some data from microphones, from sensors, they forgot to discuss or to mention about the calibration. So sometimes the examiner would want just to test whether the candidates understand the impact of the calibrations. So they would ask whether the machine, the device is calibrated, how are they calibrated? So if they are not calibrated, then how is this would affect the results, the data that they will gather all this while in their research. So it's very important that you know about the calibration, as well as the data that you calibrate, that you gather is within the range of calibration range. Okay, what is the percentage of error? Another important aspect when you're dealing with data. When you test, you need to make sure what is the allowable percentage of error, and then maybe some statistic element like 95% confidence interval and things like that. You need, obviously, the examiners also will ask about all the figures, what the figures meant in the thesis. So make sure when you put the figures, make sure you understand all the figures. You should be able to explain all the figures clearly, because sometimes the students and the candidate they put the figures, some fancy figures in their thesis, but when the examiners query the figures, they couldn't explain the figures clearly. So it's very important the figures should be able to mean something in your work. And then, of course, what do your results means? How your results agree or contradict with the rest of literature? You should be able to articulately discuss how your findings is in agreement or contradictory with the rest of the literature. If you're working on a modeling models, you should be able to validate your model. Some tests would involve a small scale testing, small scale experimental experiments. The examiner would also want to know sometimes whether does it work does it scale up. If you scale up the setup, would the results affect the results in terms of the data and things like that. So you should be able to explain this if you're working on a skill on the model or a scale of data. And next, when you come to your final findings, then you should be able to summarize your finding, and sometimes maybe whatever written in thesis might not be clear. So you should be able to summarize your finding orally, so that they sometimes sometimes when you explain to them, then only then they can understand what was written in your thesis. Then might want to see, they might want to provoke, or not just provoke, just to see what would you done differently if you have the chance to repeat all the experiments again, things like that. And finally, they would want to know if the work is original, and whether the work, especially for PhD, contributes to the knowledge. That's why I always prefer the students or the candidates to publish a paper in reputable ISI ranked journal, because whenever you manage to publish a good publication in a high ranking or reputable journals, basically your work has contributed to the knowledge, because whenever other peers, your peers or researchers cite your works, that's, for me, that's basically a contribution to knowledge. So of course, there's a how to feel very well. Of course, it's rarely happen. Normally, the students would manage to go through the Viva, or whether it be with minor or major corrections. But sometimes there are cases, although rarely, cases where students or candidates fail the Viva, or they need to repeat the Viva. So basically, some of the problem is come to it. The problem is normally involve student couldn't answer the questions, reluctant in engaging in discussions, showing disrespect to the examiners, getting angry, getting defensive. So sometimes I had one cases when the student asked me a question, not in a good way, meaning that I asked him a question, but he retaliated and asked me whether I understand the work has been done. So you need to be able to accept the criticism. You need to be able to be less defensive and more into discussion, peer discussion. So showing examiners that you do not know your work, confused, not understand the question, these all can result in the fail of a Viva. I think that's about it from me. I don't. I think I would accept later when we have a Q&A session. I would give a session to Prof. Aminul. But a final recommendation: make sure when you present the Viva, when you have a Viva session, make sure you close the loop. In the conclusion, make sure you address the objective. Uh, your conclusion, you need to address your objective of your work. Please do practice. Try to do a mock Viva with your supervisory team, your supervisor, your co-supervisor. Talk as an intellectual. Try to be confident. Always answer technically. Try to be less colloquial. And then stay calm and enjoy the Viva. Remember, you are likely to know more about the subject matter, because basically the research is yours. So as I said earlier, the examiners there is just merely to validate your work, whether you fully understand of your work. That's all. So I think that's it from me. I'd like to thanks the organizer for having me in today's session. Thank you very much. So I give back the session back to the organizer. Thank you.
Okay, hello. Hello, thank you so much, Prof. Shukry, for the wonderful presentation. So now we are going to the question answer. If anyone have the question, you can ask from the Prof.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad Shukri. There is a question raised in my mind. You said in your slides that we should not say we don't know or my supervisor said so. So what do you suggest as an alternative?
Okay. Yes. I think if you sincerely don't know, you can always say that you don't know, and you can always say that you can give you time, and then you can always come back with the answer later, or come back with a written answer. But if but you need to be able to take responsibility for your work, because as I said, you can say don't know, you don't know the answer to that particular questions, but you cannot say that you don't know because your supervisor asked you to do that, because that means that you still not clearly fully control of your research. Basically, everything is within the supervisor. You still work within the supervisor. Um, like myself, when I did my PhD, like I still remember. My supervisor told me that at the time. I mean, I did my PhD about 10 years ago. I finished my PhD 2010. During the first year, basically, it's the first year where you learn everything. The first year is learning. It's learning process. You learn about the conducting research. You learn getting data or conducting experiments, things like that. Second year, second part of the study is not just you learn performing research. At the same time, you are learning how to defend your work. So in second year, you should be able to argue your point. You should be able to argue with your supervisor academically. I'm not saying argue like fight. You know, first year, basically whatever your supervisor said, most of the students would follow. One of my friends said that if your supervisor asks you to jump, you jump. Yeah, if your supervisor asks you to jump, you just say how high, because that is the first year where you're learning everything. But when you come to second year, you should be able to have the knowledge. You should be able to argue or discuss the research intellectually with your supervisor. Your supervisor may ask you to do this and that. You may say that, okay, I would like to suggest that we do this way and that way. So it's a more intellectual. But by the time you're about to finish, you should be able to defend your work. You cannot say that, oh, I don't know why I do that. I just do that because my supervisor asked me to do so. You cannot have that entitlement. You cannot say that during the assessment. That's why PhD is not just about doing a research. Basically, PhD is also about uh, your growth as a scholar. So if the first year when you enter your PhD or your research study, and when you graduate, you don't see yourself grow as a scholar, there is something wrong with your PhD. That's why I said during the Viva session, although you know that why your supervisor asked you to do that, you know that your supervisor asked you to do that, but you cannot reply or answer the examiners. You don't know. I just do that because my supervisor says so. You need to be able to engage them intellectually, if you're not sure the answer, you can always say that I don't know the answer. I would like to go back and find the answer later, but that's about it. But you cannot put that onto your supervisor, because it's all, at the end of the day, it's your research, your work.
Okay, doctor. Thank you very much. So we can defer the answer, but we have to answer
Okay.
that question.
Yes,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
no problem.
I have a question, please.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there any other question on the floor?
Yeah. During Viva Voce,
Okay.
if the examiners ask irrelevant questions mistakenly, in this case, what should I answer?
Okay. Again, irrelevant can be, sometimes we might not sure about the relevantness of the question, but if you're sure that that is out of your context, or maybe you can always go back to the scope, the limitation that I mentioned earlier. You can always say that the project is the scope of the this is the scope project. That particular part of the question that was asked is not within the scope, but it can be part of the future studies. However, sometimes the students, candidates also can confuse ataupun cannot differentiate between whether that question have anything relevant to the work has been conducted. But yeah, again, if you are not sure, you can always say that you're not sure. Then you can always revert back later.
Okay.
Hello, Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Dr. Shukry, to share such a wonderful
Hello.
informations. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
I have one question. Let's suppose if the examiner asks a question and the answer for the candidate is not clear 100%. Let's suppose if in my mind the answer probably correct, but I may be not sure 100%. At that time, what should be a student do? Either we answer that probable answer, or we just say excuse. So what will be better for the student in this situation? Thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please? Sorry.
During the exam, if the examiner asks a question and the student is not clear 100% about the answer, but in the student mind, he know partially the answer, let's suppose, then at that time, what the student should do at that time, either answer probably or not.
Okay. I think I don't mind. For my experience, I don't mind the student to provide the answer, even though if they're not sure. At the end of the day, the examiners want to see whether, as I said, they want to see whether the student will be able to discuss or to articulate the findings. I would say that if you have many results, for example,
Yeah.
of course, we don't expect that all the results. We don't expect the student could answer all the results, all the findings, all the relating to the research.
Yeah.
If the students or the candidates could answer one particular question, I think that is part of the puzzle of the Viva session, and that's why we have the. That's why I always say that the Viva is basically a peer discussions. Yeah. So if the student absolutely have no idea about on the questions, then the student may say he or she don't know and may revert back the question later. But if they have some sort of idea, they can always put it forward and discuss his or her opinion or about the answer. Yeah. I think
Thank you,
I don't find it a problem though.
Okay, thank you, Doc. It means that we need polite the answer that time.
Yes, 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 yes. Because again, as I said, it's always the platform is a peer discussions. They want to see whether the students understand the research. Um, of course, when you see that, you wouldn't expect all the question will be like that. I mean, obviously there are some question or many questions the student can answer. There is some question that they are not sure, then they can always discuss forward with the examiners. And they can always, if the examiners want to ask them to put the information into the TC later, they can always do that.
Assalamualaikum.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum.
Yeah, walaikum salam.
Thank you, brother Associate Prof. Muhammad Shukry, for this wonderful presentation. My question is, you made mention that one of the common questions asked by examiners is, why should you be awarded with a PhD? Why someone should be awarded with a PhD? I want you to suggest for the participants and the students, what is the approach? How should a student approach this particular question? Thank you.
Okay. Again, this is another question, the philosophical part of the Viva. As I mentioned, PhD is a doctor of philosophy. This is the philosophical part of the question that they want you to be able to answer. Basically, you should highlight your work. You should highlight your work. How is the findings or your work has been beneficial to the industry or to the society for at large? If not so, how the findings or your work indirectly would affect the society. And as I mentioned earlier, not just that, they want to know whether how is your work is contribute to knowledge. Normally, for master study, it's more or less expansion of a current knowledge. But when it comes to a PhD, you're talking about contribution to the new knowledge. And I always believe that if you have of course, you can have a direct impact like to industry, to society at large. But if you have a good publication at a public domain, in high reputable journals, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, ISL ranked journals, and eventually people will cite your paper, that gives you the contribute to knowledge that we wanted. Whenever we are come across this type of question, you should highlight your work with respect to the contribution to society at large, as well as the contribution to the new knowledge. And that can be in terms of publication and so on.
Thank you.
Okay, Prof, I have some question from the YouTube, from our live stream. Okay, someone asking about that. Does attire matters for Viva? Hello.
Again, what's matter?
Attire met.
Attire.
I think Prof, I think you're asking about the dressing. I think.
Oh, the dressing code, attire. Of course.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I mean,
attire. Yes, sir.
In a of course, yeah. I mean, Viva Voce session is basically is a professional process, professional platform for scholars discuss about their findings. So of course, although there's no particular or specific dress code, but of course we always treat it as a proper professional attire process, and thus it need to be a professional attire. But yeah, I mean, as long as you are dressed with a coat, tie, or if not, it's not a tie, proper professional attire, that's fine. At the end of the day, more importantly, is the content of your study, of your research.
Yes, Prof. Okay. Prof, I have one more question regarding the how many percent of the error you allow in your experimental study?
How many?
Hello. How many percent of error you allow in your experimental study?
Oh, it depends on the field. A different field have a different percentage of error. It depends. It depends on the standards and so on. But generally, it shouldn't be more than 20%. That is high. But if you're talking about like modeling, I think it's about 20 to 30% is still good. But if you're talking about experimental, it's quite high. That's why I say it depends on the research that you are conducting. For it depends on the numbers of the specimen replicates. If you're working with the social science, then you're talking about numbers of responses. So you need to look at the standard practice. You need to look at the standard ISO standards or ASTM standards with respect to the errors allowed.
Okay, Prof. Okay, Prof. One more question. Okay, that is a very common question from the all participant. That what to do if I got question and I could not answer it. And then this is all the common question from all the participants.
I think I answered this earlier, but yeah, I think this is many candidates, many students, they are afraid they couldn't answer the questions. I mean, if you couldn't, I mean, there's only going to be a concern if you couldn't answer every questions. You know, during the 1 hour, 2 hour Viva session, all the questions raised by the examiner you couldn't answer, then that'll be a concern. Otherwise, if you couldn't answer 1 or 2 questions, that's normal. I mean, when I had my Viva 10 years ago, of course, I mean, there are questions that we couldn't answer. But I think that is a part of the puzzle, part of the learning that we get during the Viva session. And then that's why the examiners also normally they understand. I mean, those experienced examiners, normally when the student couldn't answer, they always try to pull the students, the candidate back, and then try to give them some sort of idea what sort of answer that the student should be able to should reply, things like that. I mean, I don't see a problem if the student don't know the answer, just straight up say that again you don't know the answer, and then you can always go back and search for the answer later.
I have another question, please.
Okay, we have our last question. So, okay, you can ask. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. You said that the researcher is the expert in the room. In this case, and you also said that don't argue with the examiners. In this case, how can I receive criticisms while I have strong arguments regarding my focus? And hence, how can I show my arguments to the examiners if I have a strong arguments? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the candidate, the student need to understand in terms of it's not like you cannot argue. You should be able to argue, but you need to argue intellectually. You need to be able to argue academically. Some students they might get too emotional, and when emotion comes into play, the argument becomes heated, and that's what I meant need to be avoided. Argument that I meant is you need to be able to defend your work academically. So like I said, what I meant by you the most expert is with respect to the research work that you did. Okay, you did the work, you process all the data, you do all the analysis, then you come up with the findings, whether to prove your hypothesis earlier or not, and then whether you meet the objective that you specify earlier. So you did all that. You should have the more knowledge about that particular subject matters. So that, as I said, the examiners is there to validate that whether you know all the things that you did. They may ask questions just to see whether you'll be able to able to explain it academically. So, of course, some examiners they would provoke you. They would ask you questions that might seems unfair, but you should be able to handle that type of questions. You should be able to know when to retreat or when to come back, when to argue, when to stop the argument or stop the discussion. So it's always that's part of the scholar that I was mentioning earlier. Yeah. So the 3 years, the 4 years you study your PhD, that is the scholar element that you need to be able to grow, not just the academic part, but the scholarly part. Okay. As I said, there's no problem argue, but you should know when to retreat, when to go back, when to discuss, and when to defend your work.
Thank you very much for your strong answer.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof.
Hello.
Okay, thank you. Hello.
Yeah, Prof. My name is Peo. I would like to know how student can show to the examiner that he is overconfident. Hello, can you hear me?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I say I would like to know how student can show to the examiner that he is overconfident. He said we should not be overconfident.
Again, this always come with the experience of the examiner. I mean, some students, they are very confident. They can answer the questions clearly, confidently. When we ask a question, we try to poke some questions. They will be able to respond very, very elegantly, very strongly, very confidently. Overconfident here meant like you self-profess that this is the first time it's been done. Nobody has done it in the world. Things like that. So you need to be able to be humble in terms of the results. Don't just go about and say that this is the best result that one researcher would obtain. This is the best curve. This is the things like that. You need to be able to, as I said, to discuss it, to moderate the results, to discuss it scholarly, rather than try to put it like nobody in the world has done this, for example. So that sort of thing.
All right.
Okay. Thank you once again, Prof. Shukry, for the answering all questions and for the
Sure,
great
thank you very much.
presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us. Okay, now we are going to another session. I will pass to mic to the Shabdi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to Associate Professor IR Dr. Muhammad Shukry for such a fruitful speaking presentation. So for now, we are continuing back to our session. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our second speaker for today, Professor Dr. Muhammad Aminul Islam, which is from Professor of Faculty of Applied Science and Humanities, University Malaysia Perlis. He also produced 20 PhD graduate students. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome our second speaker, Professor Dr. Aminul Islam, to deliver this session. Professor, the floor is yours. Thank you.
All right, Brother Shukry, the moderator, and Sister Sonia, as well as Sister Anissa, Brother Rashid, who are helping us to conduct the session now. First of all, I would like to thank the UTHM Graduate Student Association, as well as Center for Graduate Studies of University Tun Hussein, Malaysia, for taking the initiative to organize this webinar. And I would like to also thank the other collaborating universities. There are many. University Kebangsaan Malaysia, University Putra Malaysia, University Technology Malaysia, University Technology Petronas, UTAR, my university, University Malaysia Perlis, as well as we have Daffodil International University Bangladesh. And we got a few more other collaborators also, right, joining hands together to organize this event. So we thank you all for joining us, especially Professor Dr. Shukry Abdul Majid, for accepting our invitation and joining this webinar. I'm very sure participants would be very benefited, will benefit a lot from his presentation, as well as during the deliberation question answer sessions, all right? So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, let me start with that. Assalamu alaikum, and very good morning, very good afternoon, and very good evening. We do have participants from, I think, over 40 countries. So in Malaysia, it's afternoon, but we do have participants from US, I saw in the message, and many other different places. So thank you for joining us, and hope you'll be benefiting from our session, inshallah, okay? Let me share my screen, and Rashida, কোনটা দিব দেখেন একটু। এটা তো ঠিক আছে না? দিছে যেটা তো না। Okay, all right. I think Prof. Dr. Shukry Abdul Majid has made my job easier, as he has tackled many issues and he answered many questions that participants had. Let me share some of my ideas and thinking. Actually, Brother Shukry and myself, we do chair a lot of Viva Voce sessions at UniMAP. And I did also chair some sessions whereby students were from engineering faculty. And Prof. Shukry Abdul Majid also chaired many sessions where the students were from social science. Okay, Prof. Shukry has chaired few sessions of my PhD students. And okay, so both of us, we have diverse experience of chairing sessions from different faculties and different backgrounds, all right? So I think that gives us some kind of edge, you know, to answer the questions that you may have. Okay, আমার স্ক্রিন মুভ করে না কেন এই এক সমস্যা okay now basically in your PhD journey, that's what you go through. You cross a lot of hurdles. You started from finding the title, and then finding the supervisor, coping with the supervisor, you know, the demands that supervisor has, and then conflict between supervisor and co-supervisor, and many other things, you know, and then you have problem in the proposal defense, collecting data and all that. So finally, today's session is, we are making assumption that you have gone through all the hurdles and the reach to the big day, the biggest day of your academic career. All right, so it is the final Viva Voce session for the hard work that you have put for 3 years or more, okay? Now, if you look at the bottom, the slide I put, this is it. if you really do a good job and you really understand very well of the draft that you have submitted, then you will have a very good sleep. That's what is very important. Make sure you have a very good sleep so that in the morning when you wake up, you are fresh, you feel happy, you feel excited, and you are going to enjoy it. Basically, it is your Viva session. This is your show, you know. So you have to be composed, you have to be confident, because this is your work. You have done the work. Not anyone has done it for you. So you should have a good sleep, sound sleep. Wake up in the morning, not like Miss Sonia's, you know, going to bed at 5 a.m. and waking up at 11, right? But right, you should be going to bed early and wake up early, be prepared, be ready. And you know, this is your session. You are basically, as Prof. Shukry says, you are the boss of the session. So you are the scholar. So basically, the examiners are there to verify, to validate the work that you have done, okay? This is what you are expected to do. You're supposed to find a solution of a problem, all right? So what we do, we identify research problem through literature review, and what is most important, from the industry itself, where the problem is rooted. So that, let me answer that question that many of you may ask. What is the difference between literature gap and research problem? Sometimes students ask me, are they the same? So I would definitely say it's not. Literature review is basically when you find out the gap, partly you have defined a research problem where you do not have adequate solutions to, you know, from the perspective of theory and knowledge. But where does the problem actually occur? It is the industry, it is the society or nation or the world. So we have to go back to the context where the problem is affecting. So finding out the research gap, the knowledge gap from literature is part of research problem, and then you have to get the right root of the problem where it is affecting. So if you do that, then at the end of the session, we'd like to see the outcomes of your research has basically fulfill, you know, fill in that gap. If you cannot, then the picture shows, right, you are going to fall in down. You may not cross the hurdle of the final Viva Voce. The research problem that you have identified, then you have translated into research questions. All those answers should be available in the final chapter. If you don't have answers of certain questions, make sure you go back to chapter 1 and review back, edit the question. Make sure you have all the answers of all questions. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody is going to question you what was your research question during proposal defense and what is the research question now. Nobody is going to tell you that. So if you find the answers, now you have the answers, you can tally with the research questions and go back and edit the research question before the final submission. All right? Now, this is one. The other one at the bottom of the slide, as you see, when you do research, it is not your work alone. Definitely, we expect you to work independently, but it's not your work alone. It is the support of your supervisors, support of examiners during the proposal defense, pre-viva, you know. So many people help you. And then only you cross the bridge, right? That's how it is. So your supervisors, your examiners, they all are basically helping you. Everybody want to see you enjoying doing the research. Everybody want to see you confident, and you are passing with flying colors in the final Viva Voce sessions. All right. Of course, every final Viva Voce session at the end of it, we see, especially if it's a female candidate, we see the candidate is crying, even though pass with minor correction, still cry. Pass with major correction, still cry. And if the student really fail, cannot go through, you can imagine, you know, the sort of situation they're going to have. So basically, some cries are cries of joy, and some cries are cries of sorrows. So we like to see everybody, you know, cries with joy and excitement, you know, have completed the PhD. So the beginning, definitely you have to start greeting the chairperson, the examiner and supervisors. You got to introduce yourself, your name, discipline, what you are studying, and other fact about yourself. Remember, you have to do ice breaking. You have to create a situation where you feel easy and you make your examiners, the panel, to be easy with you, okay? And then after that, you will introduce your topic itself, okay? Now, Viva is basically an opportunity. to discuss your work with expert. Take it that way. Then you will feel easy, you know. Basically, you are going to do some discussion with experts who are the examiners. The external examiner is definitely the expert of the area as well as the internal examiner. So you have to improve the argument and thesis based on the comments come from the panel members. So we do not really expect you to answer all the questions. Definitely, you will not have answer of all questions. You will not, never. Okay, I have attended many sessions as chairman, as internal examiner, external examiner. Almost all sessions, to certain extent, to certain point, students may not be able to have good answers. But don't worry, Prof. Shukry has given you some advice. I do have some of mine. There was a question, I think Ms. Sonia has earlier said, and participant asking about the attire. To me, attire is very important. You got to be dressed up properly. Make sure you look elegant, you look, you look handsome, smart, you look handsome or beautiful. It's very important to me because the Viva Voce session is same as you are going for an interview in the job. You will get the job when you are able to convince the interviewers, right? So it is the same for the final Viva Voce. The internal examiner, external examiner, chairman, they got to be convinced of your work. But again, the way you look is very important, you know. If you come with the ugly dress up or something unacceptable kind of dress up, the first impression is already wrong. Okay, I have seen some of the Viva Voce sessions where female are dressed properly, then some of the examiners say, oh, you look very beautiful. Or even the guys come up with a tie and coat and all that, and sometimes I see examiners telling the guy, hey, you look very handsome today. So this is very normal. This is very normal. So the look is very important. Whatever figure we have, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has given us, we accept that. But with that, we have to dress up in a way so that we look smart. We look smart and elegant, acceptable dress up, which is very important to me. All right, you are showing the first impression is very important. Now, for the examiner, examiners definitely will also try to make you feel ease. Basically what they want you to do is to explain your research. Nothing more than that. They have read the draft and they just want to verify and validate whether this is your work or somebody has done it. And whether your work worth getting a PhD. That's what they want to do, okay? But sometimes some examiners could also challenge you and then the argument starts. And you may run into trouble, Sometimes some examiners could be very aggressive. And then you have to have your way of dealing with them, okay? So I'm going to have some suggestions for you on that. And also, some examiners could be very detailed, They look at nitty-gritty things. They look at sentences, even grammatical mistake. They will ask you, please refer to page number 15, page number 32, page number 18, and all that. And it continues until the end. You may have that kind of examiner, very common, very common. Huh? I was very fortunate in my final Viva Voce session. My external was from US, from North Carolina University, even though I did my PhD at USM. So when one of the internal examiner started asking me question by referring page by page, then the American professor stopped the panel member. He said, why are you doing that? Basically, he is an adult, you have written the report, right? The examiner said, yes. He said, then he can refer to the report and he can do all those minor correction. He don't have to raise all these small issues, So the American professor stopped the panel member to ask all those nitty-gritty, small things. Okay, so he said, if you have anything major, ask him. If you don't have anything major, please stop there. Okay, so that makes my life very easy. And my Viva only about 35 minutes, only 35 minutes. My Viva was concluded. So I was very grateful and very blessed having a professor from US, an external examiner. Even at the beginning, I was very worried, but he became a blessing for me in the final Viva Voce sessions. All right. Now, preparation. Okay, so you need to have some mental preparation. You have to anticipate some questions, and you have to prepare some sample answers for that. And for that, today's session is all about. Okay, I'm going to give you, I think, 40 to 50 questions that are usually raised or asked during final Viva Voce sessions. So we will share the slide with you in the YouTube channel. just under in my YouTube channel, you will have the video of this session. And under the video, you will have the slides available there. Prof. Shukry's slide as well as my slides should be available for you there. You can download it. Okay. So you have to anticipate questions. You have to prepare. You have to do some rehearsal with your friends and supervisors and ask them to raise questions for you and try to tackle the answers if you can. Okay. And there will be some easy question and hard questions. Okay. Some could be open-ended, some could be closed-ended, some could be proving, some could be applied, some general, some could be very specific questions. So it depends on the kind of examiners that you have. Okay, completely dependent on the kind of examiners you have. So what you do then, you have to develop some kind of skills and equipment, right? As the, I know I've given you a photo of that, like if you want to play football, you got to practice a lot. It's not like simply guy would just go to the football field and shoot the ball. Okay, it's not like that. So Viva Voce session is definitely a very technical session. Conducted by a few experts of the area. So you got to train up and you have to develop certain skills and equipment in you and techniques to deal with those questions that are going to be asked during the session. Now there's some common mistakes. Let me share with that. I give you a funny, right at the right corner. Let's eat Genpa, right? It's like you are all going to eat the Genpa. I remember when I was doing my first degree at International Islamic University, Malaysia, and we started to brush up our English. It is very common when I ask people, you know, how do you cook? So you say, I'm a very good cooker. Okay, that was the beginning of English. I'm a very good cooker. So actually, it's not right, right? I'm a very good cook. So that kind of mistakes are always there in the final Viva Voce session. The first one is not taking your first impression seriously. So that's what I talk about, the dress up, you know, dress up and get up that you have. You got to get up early in the morning, you know, if you dress up properly and come to the session, we come to the session, greet them properly, okay? That's the first impression. In marketing, we say first impression is the last impression. So first impression is very important, all right? It's very important. When you buy something, you buy because of your first impression. You look at your dress. If you like the color, you like, you know, the color and thought it matches you, then only you start asking how much the price is. It's not that you are just going and buying it, you know. So first impression is very important, very important. Being too polished and robotic, you know, sometimes we feel like I have done the work and I know it very well and I just try to answer as much, you know, as quickly as I can, which is not right. Remember, we all are human beings. We do have mistakes and our research got a lot of weaknesses and we cannot be showing like it is a perfect work and I am a perfectionist, you know, I produce the best of the world job. It's not. We shouldn't be, all right? Number 3, chalking on the tough question. It's common. You have a tough question and you start like showing your weakness. You start like, you know, sound like, you know, and the sort of feeling you show to people that you are not really comfortable with that kind of question. So chalking is not really expected. Be composed, be confident. Take time to listen the question properly. If you have the answer, answer it. If you don't have the answer, you can always ask the examiner to rephrase the question if you do not really understand the question. And when I chair the session, most of the time, I will have to rephrase the question, you know, so students get to that session where I am chairman, they are very lucky because I will always rephrase the question. If I see the student do not really understand the question, answering wrongly, I will always rephrase the question for the student so that he can answer. So you may not have always chairman like that. So you can always politely ask the examiner, Prof, can you please rephrase? I did not really understand your question. Or I don't really understand your question. The examiners will definitely rephrase the question and make it like you understand it. Okay, it is always good. The fourth mistake that I always find with the candidates are not very humble. Some students are very egoistic and they have tendency of showing off. That's where the argument starts and problem starts there. I remember one of my students did PhD under my supervision, and he was arguing with the external examiner. And it was continuing and chairman did not stop, you know. So as a supervisor, I can't speak. So I asked permission from the chairman, would you please allow me to say something? The chairman said, please proceed. So then I told the student, it is good to see that the student is arguing on the topic, but unfortunately, you are wrong. The external examiner is right. So please accept it and stop there. Okay. So I have to interfere. So that happens sometimes. If you are not humble and you are a bit egoistic of your work and you feel like I did the best of the world job and you started showing off, then problem will start. And you have to remember the external examiner, internal examiner, they are very experienced people. They have gone through all the stages that you are going through now, and they have gone through some more than you. So you got to respect them, okay? Even though sometimes they could be wrong, still you got to be polite and you have to argue in a very polite manner, okay? Number 5, that what we have been witnessing now a lot, I do not know why, the students having different draft than the examiners and other panel members. So when we tell the students to refer to page number 25, he cannot find what we ask him to find. So he refers to his draft and we find out later it is in page 27 or page 23. Why does that happen? It's because after submission of the final draft to CGS, students start reading and he found many mistakes. So he start correcting the draft. And then he updates the literature and all that. And then he printed it out. So the draft you have is completely different from the draft the panel has. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Because the examiners or panel members will only refer to the draft submitted. So what should you do then? You should print a copy, extra copy when you submit to CGS. If you are submitting 6 copies, print out 7 copies. Keep 1 copy with you. Bring that copy to the session, not the different copy, all right, from the examiners. Okay, the next mistake that we find, after submission of the thesis, students feel that I work for 3 years and 4 years, so my work is done, and they forget reading the thesis. So remember, once you submitted the draft, it takes usually 2 to 3 months to organize your Viva. Certain cases, even 6 months in certain university. You have to keep reading, please, brothers and sisters. Keep reading your work, keep reading your work, okay? You have to make sure you know exactly what you have in the draft when you appear in the final Viva Voce sessions. Keep reading, okay? The next mistake that I always find with the student, of course, every research we have weaknesses, but you cannot be exposing too much. Don't talk too much, you know, keep it hide until and unless the examiners or the board of members, panel members ask you on something that you have a weakness, then only talk about it. Other than that, if you have serious weaknesses, even only you know, or probably your supervisor know, hide it, keep quiet on it, right? Why should you be telling people that I have some problem in my thesis? Why should you tell that? Okay, so keep quiet, keep it hide, unless, you know, when the board of panel members, when panel members raise it, then politely tell them, okay, this is what I have a weakness in my thesis because of that, and I'm recommending the future researchers should be, you know, doing a more research on this to cover up that weakness, okay? But do not expose too much. Getting tensed up at the beginning and during the session. So at the beginning, most of the time we find students really get tensed up, and during the session when they get hard question, they get tensed up. Please don't. During the session, you know, if I'm chairing the session, I will always ask the student, would you like to drink, you know, bit of water, you know, to ease the student to feel comfortable with that, okay? The next one is very common also with the students, not really answering the question. It's because that you did not really understand the question. So you start, you know, going around answering different things that usually the examiners are asking you. So if I am the chairman of the session, I will stop the student. I'll tell the student, you're not answering the question. The question is about that, it's straight. But not many chairmen will do that. So you have to really understand the question. If you do not, ask the examiners, can you please rephrase? Can you please ask me again? Okay. Now, this is also the part of preparation. Please check your institution policies and practices. Many university does not require presentation. For example, like even my final Viva Voce session at USM, there was no presentation. It's straight question and answer session, okay? So it depends. So different institute has different rule. If your university has a policy that you have to do presentation, like my university, students are given 25 minutes to 30 minutes time for presentation. And then we always see the students, the mistake they do, they want to present a lot, but they often forget that examiners actually have read every lines of your thesis. So why should you be presenting so much? Highlight the research problem, research question, bit of your theories, and then straight go to your methodology bit and focus more on your findings and contributions, okay? I do have a video in my YouTube channel. How should you present, prepare the presentation slide? Possibly you would like to watch it. I think that is the most read or viewed video in my channel. I think so far 5,000 plus people has viewed it. Okay, so please listen, watch and listen to that video about how to prepare presentation slide for the final Viva Voce session. So that would be helpful. Okay, I say reread your thesis and keep updating your research. Think about what you will and will not defend. Okay, draw up list of possible questions that we are going to give you today. It's not like sitting on the laptop where you can edit a sentence as long, you cannot do any correction during the session, right? You can't. So if mistake is there, it is a mistake. So you have to tell them, okay, I will do the correction, inshallah. I'm taking note, okay? Another mistake I always see with the student, they don't have a piece of paper and pen with them. How can you be coming to the session without a pen and papers? You have a draft and you must have some papers and pen, right? When examiners raise question, you take it down, please, so that it shows that you are really committed and attentive and listening to the panel members, okay? So you are sitting there, you cannot do any correction now, but you can always tell the panel members, I'm taking notes. Those small correction I will do. I'm sorry, I did some mistakes. It's fine. You acknowledge it and you will do it, okay? Then make sure you have a copy with you, printed copy. Not the computer copy, not the soft copy, printed copy. I think about 3 months before, I attended a Viva Voce session from a foreign university, and a student did not have his draft with him. So the chairman was so angry, he took his draft and threw to him, He was so angry. He said, how can you come to a Viva Voce session without having your draft? So you must have your copy with you, right? Okay. Now again, still on the preparation, right? Get up with a good start. Prepare for icebreaker. You can always start asking questions to examiners and thanking them and all that. Silence does not mean bad news, meaning that do not really talk much. Do not really talk much until you are warranted, okay? Until you are warranted. Do not really point out your weaknesses. Have talked about it. Next one is important. Don't talk like a politician. We know politicians they like talking. You shouldn't be talking a lot. You shouldn't be talking a lot. Only speak what is necessary. Okay. We call it what? Short and sweet, right? We call it short and sweet. So speak as it is necessary. Don't speak a lot. Okay. You may need to move from friendly question to complex debates, right? You will have friendly questions at the beginning, and you know that slowly you are moving into complex debates where you have to argue. I remember there was one session, a professor, very learned professor, asked the candidate, do you agree with me that knowledge is universal? And the student says yes. So by answering that question, he put himself into the trouble. So the professor said, okay, if you argue the knowledge is universal, then when you apply the knowledge in different contexts, you should do the same, right? Then the student say yes. Then he said, why are you doing that research then in the context of Malaysia? Because this research has been done in many countries and many authors. So I don't see anything new here, okay? So when you're answering a question like that, be careful, answering the questions. Okay, focus on your contribution. That is the most important. Your PhD is given because of your contribution. I will talk about it later again, okay? And expect your Viva to last about 2 to 4 hours. 2 to 4 hours. If you're very lucky, you get out in 2 hours time. If you're not very lucky, it goes up to 4 hours, even 5 hours. I have seen a Viva session 5 hours. We call it torture chamber. Torture chamber. I have 2 friends who did PhD with me, who was a psychic, who became a psychic and had to go for medication for 2 years. For 2 years. And I had another friend who failed in the first attempt, and the Viva was 5 hours long. And after coming out of the Viva, he was in trauma, and he couldn't drive a car for 5 years. 5 years, his wife used to drive him. So you may have that kind of situation also in the final Viva Voce session if you do not know how to tackle the question posed to you, okay? So you got to be very careful, okay? And my last preparation point that I put, enjoy it. You have worked hard, and this is your session. You should be enjoying. You should be enjoying. This is your session, okay? And you're supposed to be a doctor after this, okay? A doctor before your name. So you should be enjoying the session, all right? Now, some tips and tricks before I go straight to the kind of question usually asked. Be an excellent listener. Okay, listen to the entire question from internal and external examiner. Okay, most of the time, many times we see students, they do not really listen question properly and try to answer. Or even before the examiner finish question, they start answering the question. Please don't do that. Once the question is posed to you, then you should be taking time. Allow yourself to, arrange the kind of your thinking, and then the answers that you have in your mind. So take some time. It's not that when the question is asked, immediately you have to answer the question. You can take a bit time. Pause for a while. Prepare yourself. Then only start talking. Okay? And always give the credit for asking question. How can you do that? I have a slide for you afterwards. Okay? Respond question to bridge the next questions. When you are answering the first question, make sure you know what kind of answers could be there immediately after that. Okay? So you have to keep that bridging. So you have to forecast, predict what question could be after this question. So do not get caught by giving an answer in the first question whereby you will get caught in the second question. Be careful on that, okay? Keep communicating. You start asking question like, once you answer the question, ask the examiner, does that answer your questions? Okay, be polite. Or is that kind of information you are looking for? Keep communicating, keep talking to people. That's because it's basically an interview session. Okay, so keep communicating with the panel members. This is how you got to be, keep communicating and giving credit to the members who is asking questions. So once they ask you a question, you tell, thank you for the question, all right? So that give examiner a bit, feeling of ease, right? Then you can always say, that was a great question. So you are giving credit to the panel members. That is an interesting question. And then sometimes when the examiners give you some comments and say, yes, you are right, of course you are right. Okay, and then sometime when the examiner find you are not answering the question and he rephrase the question, then you say, thank you for that, I am very aware of it. So that's how you can be very polite and you keep engaging yourself with the examiners. If you do that, basically you will be controlling the interview session, the Viva Voce session. The question and answer session will be coming in your hand. Basically, you are going to control the session because you are interacting and communicating with the examiners, all right? So you got to be very good in communication skills and PR skills to keep yourself engaged with the examiners. Now, if you find something very difficult, that's what Prof. Shukry earlier was trying to answer to you. So if you find something not very familiar with you, you cannot really answer the question. You just say, sorry, I am not familiar with this word. I'm very sorry, this is not familiar to me. There's nothing wrong with that. We do not expect you to know everything of the world. Your PhD is basically in a very specific, small, concise area. We don't expect you to know everything. So the area that you focus on your PhD, there could be thousands of papers published. We don't expect you to read all papers. As long as you read all the key papers and recent papers, you are safe. So you may not have read a paper that is published 5 years before, even 2 years before, people did not come in notice to you. So you just say, I'm sorry, I did not get hold of this paper. I did not really read that. So I'm not familiar with that. You can always say that. You're not expected to read everything in that area, okay? And then, do you think this would further strengthen my thesis, meaning that when you, a panel member is giving a suggestion, so you are asking back that question, do you think, Prof, that is going to strengthen my thesis? If the Prof said definitely yes, then you say, okay, I will consult with my supervisors and we'll add on, we'll add on with that idea and incorporate that idea in my thesis, okay? And then when you have interpretations of your data and you find that panel members do not agree and they give a different interpretation, you can always say that perhaps this could be an alternative interpretation of my data. But the way I interpret it is also not wrong. You can always tell that, I remember there was one of my students' PhD thesis where Prof. Shukry was the chairman. And my student used PLS and he has 2 dependent variables. And the internal examiner argued that in PLS, you cannot use 2 dependent variables. You cannot run that. So, and the student says, no, I can. Why I cannot? So the internal examiner insists that he cannot. And because of that, he said the student has to resubmit the thesis. So now you can imagine what can I do as a supervisor. I know the student is right, the examiner is wrong. So what can I do as a supervisor? So I politely asked permission from the chairman. Prof. Shukry was the chairman. I think Prof. Shukry still remembers. So I said, basically, Prof, SPSS is the third generation software. In SPSS, if we can use two dependent variables, why we can't use in PLS, which is a fourth generation language, fourth generation software. And still the internal examiner is not convinced, So Prof. Shukry said, even though I am not from social science or business, but the way student responded all the questions, the way the student handled the session, I don't think the students should go for resubmission. That's what he said. As a chairman, he made a rule there. He said, we may give him major correction because supervisor even said he is right. So I told the internal examiner, okay, I will get an email response from Prof. Ramaya. I think you know him, expert in Malaysia on PLS. He said he doesn't want that. He wanted me to get a response from Professor here, Joseph here, the father of PLS in the world. Can you imagine? So after the session, I have to write an email to Prof here. And then after 3 days, I didn't get reply. So I have to look for new email. I emailed to him. Then he answered. He said, he have done what is right. Then I forwarded to the internal examiner, the chairman. So that kind of situation also happens. You are right, but the panel members say you are wrong. So that kind of situation that the supervisor has to come to rescue you. And you can be polite and still you got to be strong because you are right. Okay? All right. The beginning, I'm now going to the question, the kind of question usually asked. Okay? So I talked about preparation and all that and some mistakes usually we do. And some tips and tricks that I have already talked about. Now I'm going to share with you some questions that usually asked. At the beginning, we'll start with examiners will ask you, can you start summing up your research work? So they would like to hear something from you. So you start summarizing the thesis. So you say, okay, basically, I reviewed research papers and I found there's a research gap. And then I got some evidence from the industry that there's really problem. So that I collected data and I did a study and all that. So they will stop you, after 1 to 2 minutes, and examiners would not let you continue. So they may ask you next question. Can you sum up in one sentence of your thesis? In one sentence, in one sentence. This is a very probing question and a difficult question. So what do you say in one sentence? Then you have to highlight your contribution, main contribution. You say the problem was this, and through my research, I have concluded that this can solve this problem. Okay, so straight to the striking point, the main contribution of your thesis. Then some examiners may ask you this question: why did you choose this topic? Why? The students have different answers. For example, I saw a student saying that actually I work, say for example, his thesis about HR. He said I work in the HR division and I saw this problem, so I thought maybe I should do a study. Some students say, okay, I was reading a paper and I found that some literature gap is available, so that motivated me to do the study. So we have different kind of answers. So what could be the right answer? You have to focus both. You have to say basically you have reviewed papers and you found some literature gap, some knowledge gap. And you go back to the industry or society or nation and you found actually there are problems in the society related to that and you have evidence for that. So if you provide the evidence that, this evidence shows, that this kind of problem exists and this kind of theoretical gap is there, which can be, explained by this. So you are talking about why did you choose these topics? You got to explain that. You cannot say that, because I like this topic, so I choose this topic. They answer their question like, students like that, answering like that. I like this area, so I want to do a research like that. That's not the kind of answers we expect from you, okay? What made you to do this piece of work? So again, a similar kind of a question, right? Why do you think that it is so important to do a research on this? Again, you are coming back to the research gap and research problem, am I right? All right, let me move to the next slide. Still on the motivation, right? What are some motivating factors behind your research? Common question. Why? Why? So possibly you could say that my degree and master, my major were these. So I want to proceed my career in the area. So, you know, that was a motivational factor because I do have right background and I choose the right area to continue to do the research. You know, and then it could be also that you work in certain industry or you witness certain kind of problem and you show some data and evidence that, you know, previous research papers, they have recommended, you know, that future research should be undertaken in this area. So all sort of thing, you can answer very different, you know, different answers could be there. But as long as you can tell people that your real motivation and people understand you that why you want to do research is fine. What kind of idea ties your thesis together? This is very important, right? Remember, thesis is just one piece of work. So you start with research problem, then we translate research problem into research questions. Then we go to your, you know, the modeling or framework. Then we collect data. We have findings and all that. So key issues and debates are basically in social science research are independent variable. The main problem that you have is the dependent variable, and the key issues are independent variable. So in engineering and science, I'm not very sure how it is done, but definitely you do have certain equations and modeling. I think also you look into that. Okay, so dependent variable is the main problem, and then issues that drive to the problem, those are the independent variables. So you can always tell these are the issues. All right, I'm going to show you a slide on this, right? And I'm always saying that at the beginning, remember the first impression is the last impression. That one always keep in mind. At the beginning, you got to do very well. As we say, good start is half done, right? And excellent start is half done. So at the beginning question, if you answer very correctly, next your job will be easier. The examiners will have a feeling like this is your work and you are very proficient and no, you are very good. So that kind of feeling would be always there. So this is how I created a template to plot your research problem. You have your research problem, and then you plot all the issues one by one. Okay, that answers the question, what are the issues driven you to do a research? Okay, so this is your, I have given the title, the slide will be shared with you. So you have a dependent variable, say for example, farm value, and what affects the farm value, this student looking at financial business tricks. So I have plotted all the issues. So that will be easier for you to tell the examiners, these are the issues that driven me to do the research. Okay, this is the research problem, and these are the issues. So this is about knowledge gap, and then you have to straight proceed to contextual, industrial, or practical issues. These two must be combined. Theoretical gap, knowledge gap is not enough to prove that there is a need of a study. Some kind of data has to be there from the industry or the society or nation or the world at large. So data support should be there to back up, you know, your claim that there are some knowledge gap and you'd like to fill up that gap by doing research. Okay, so these two had to be combined. Later I will come back again when it comes to contribution. Okay. Now we come now to the key questions. Okay, the question could be, examiners could ask you a question like, what is your position as professional or personal in relation to the field and these research questions, all right? So they may want to hear some kind of your personal views on the research questions you have. This is basically to test the student, whether the student really understand, you know, what he is doing, all right? Then next question, kind of question we may also ask you, what prior conception or experiences did you bring to this study? So that's where you are going to focus on your literature gap and your practical contextual gap, right? How did your research question emerge? So how did you arrive at your research questions? Remember, from research problem, you have issues identified, and relationship between every issue to the problem become research question. Am I right? So all those issues are related to your research problem. That's how we are going to answer. How did you arrive at those research questions you have, right? This is the beginning again, right? The key questions. Research context, okay? So the main research questions, definitely it is in the draft and they have read it, but still they want to listen from you. And always do not read the draft. Do not read it from draft. It is your work. You should know what are the questions you try to answer, right? You just tell them without reading the draft. Be confident, and you have to be prepared like that. And do not even refer to a small paper notes, looking at the paper and then answering the question. No, you should be knowing, familiar with the research question that you have. Okay, what theories or theoretical framework that have drawn upon your research? That's where for business social science we will be talking about underpinning theories or supporting theories. What are the important theories that underpin your research? Very important, all right? So that's what you got to look at. What are the theories your study illuminate, right? Again, the similar kind of question. So either question can be asked We won't ask all the questions, right? Basically, I'm giving the list of questions usually we ask you, or the panel member asks you, but not necessarily that they are going to ask all these questions, right? There could be many different type of questions there, but we are giving you some kind of, ideas what kind of questions are usually asked. Okay, all right. On the literature review, the questions I would usually would be like, what shaped or guided your literature review? That's a very common question, all right? Or could be, why did you cover these areas that you did? Okay, and could be, why did you or did not include the work of X in your study? So as I said earlier, you may have many papers published. You don't have to read all, and you may not cite all. So an examiner may always bring out, I see common to some examiners, what they will do, they will get hold of some papers, they will print it out and bring with them and tell the student, see, these papers are very good papers, but you did not cite in your research. So what did you do in that case? You can always politely tell them, Prof, I have tried my best to cover the key studies and I have covered them. But again, I did not come across of these papers. If you kindly share with me, I will update my literature. Okay, I will update my literature. I will use these references. Thank you very much, Prof, for sharing with me. Okay, so that kind of approach has to be there. Okay, because the literature review, you may not be covering everything that is needed. There'll be always shortfalls. There'll be always shortfalls. If examiners advise you to edit and update something, definitely you have to accept that. And you can always tell them, okay, I'll consult with my supervisor. Thank you very much for sharing these, and I will update my literature using these papers. Okay. Literature review, again, what are the 3 most important papers related to your thesis? Now, very specific, there are very key papers. There are key papers, most important papers in your area. You must read those 3 papers, or 5 papers, or 10 papers, or 20 papers. But the examiner is asking you, tell me the 3 most important papers. So now you got to tell him, right? The 3 most important papers. You got to give the citation. Okay, William 2002. Okay, Amin 2010, and Shukry 2015. These are the 3 key papers that shape my study. Okay, so definitely you can do that, and you have to do that. Okay, what had the most impact in the growth of your theory and practice in the subject area? So again, you have to refer to the studies being done and the theories being developed and validated or extended. You have to talk about them. Now, when it comes to methodology, common questions would be, why did you employ this method? Why? Okay, why not others? When you review papers, there are many different approaches and different research methods. So why did you accept one and didn't accept one? So you have to have justification. By right, you should have justification in your draft itself. Okay, so now if you do not have that, make sure you get ready to answer that question. All right, but to me, I would always advise the student, make sure you have justification on the method that you have selected, okay, in the draft itself. So that will make your life easy during the Viva Voce session. You can always refer, you can tell examiners, Prof, can you please refer to page number this, where I have actually justified why I choose this method. Okay, all right, so next question is the similar one, right? And then, how did you use the particular technique of research? What did you make out of it? So now it's very specific. So you are saying that I have used this technique, and because what? I have got this kind of outcome, So now you are justifying again the kind of methodology that you have used. I have to do my presentation a bit faster so that we can take on some questions, all right? So I will move a bit fast from now. Okay, methodology, still you have some questions. What is the unit of analysis? Very common question. So unit of analysis is the unit that you analyze in your research. It is the unit where the data comes from. If the data coming from employees, then your unit of analysis is employees. If your data is coming from customer, then your unit of analysis is customer, individual. If your data coming from organization, unit of analysis is organization. So be very careful on that, okay? How did you establish the boundary around the scope of your data collection? Now moving into very important area, say for example, you are doing a study on the manufacturing industry in Malaysia. So most of the manufacturing industry in Malaysia are situated in Penang, in Selangor, in Kedah, as well as JB, right? Johor Bahru, or Johor, right? But again, if you take these 3 states, there are so many companies. So how did you decide to go to specific industry and the farms available there? So you have to have justification. How did you do that? Okay, you have to have justification of that. I remember there was one student, one of my friend, failed in his first attempt in the Viva. He did a study on online shopping about 15 years before, 10 years before. And his sample was only MBA student. So the external examiner did not agree with the sampling. He said, how can you assume that online shoppers are only MBA student? So your sampling frame is wrong. So he was asked to redo collecting of data and doing all that, okay? So he suffered another 1 year, collecting new data and all that. So you got to be very careful, all right? So boundary of data collection, very important. Justification must be there with you. What alternatives did your approach offer? So when you choose a particular method, there must be some other method also available, and you should be knowing all of them. And you should tell the examiners these are the other methods available, okay? Now, let me move into data analysis. This is also a common question. Did anything surprise you in your data? It may, right? The instruments that you have developed, the way you have collected data, it may go out of your expectation. So you can definitely say, yes, I was surprised of receiving certain responses are like that, okay? And I found some anomalies. So what did you do with that? So definitely we have certain process of screening the data. So that has to be explained. How did you screen the data, okay? And took out some bias or whatever the responses you have. How did you analyze your data? It's very common in social science. You will say, I use PLAs, I use Stata or SPSS. But whatever software you use, you make sure you have justification for it also, okay? So you cannot simply say that PLAs is the latest software, so I use PLAs. Definitely it cannot be, okay? You got to be very specific. Why PLAs? Why? Possibly you say because my data size is small, you know, so you have to look at justification like that. So to justify why you use certain software. So you cannot say PLS is latest and I use the latest one, you know. For certain data, if it is time series data, you require SPSS. It's a panel data, you need this data. So you have to have the justification why you use certain kind of software. How did you categorize or filter your data, right? I have answered that question earlier. This is also a common question. Now, data analysis also, there are other questions could be, did themes emerge from your study? You know, it could be a posteriori, or did you bring them to the data? That's what we call a priori, right? So when you look at the data, you screen the data, then you will have to establish some kind of theme, right? You can see some kind of theme would be always there. And why did you analyze the data in this way? Why did you use, say, for example, logistic regression, not multiple regression? Why didn't you use some other methods, okay, rather than linear regression? So questions should be always there like that. So that is basically, you know, to find anything wrong with you. That is to verify that you have done the correct thing and you understand it, okay? Now, I must mention here that many of you would be outsourcing the data analysis. So you pay some people and they do analysis for you, okay? There's not something wrong. You can outsource the analysis. But when you are presenting the findings, your outsourced guy is not there for you, right? It is you who is defending. So make sure you understand all the results and interpret them very well. Huh? You would be lucky if your external examiner, say for example, use PLS and the external examiner does not understand how to use PLS, then you are very lucky. If the external examiner is very well versed of PLS and all that software, then you will be in trouble. He will ask you a lot of questions and to check whether you really understand the robustness of analysis that you have adopted in your study. Okay, so be very careful. They may always ask you a question, could it have been done in another way? You got to be very careful answering that question. If you say yes, then you are getting into trouble, you know. You got to be very careful. You may say possibly yes, but the way I have done is the most appropriate one. Then they may always ask you back why it is most appropriate. Then you must have some justification, some citation, okay, from previous researchers. That has to be there. Now we move to result and discussion. How do your results in your field relate to the literature? That's why you find actually candidates are very poor most of the time when they write discussion. They just write what they find in the findings and describe them. They forget to relate it with the literature. You know, what is very important actually would be always relating your findings with the literature review that you have, okay? What results do we find most interesting and why? Okay, that answers bring another question. Sometime when you find your hypothesis, say you have 5 hypotheses and 3 are rejected, and the student come to me and ask me, Prof, what should I do now? I say, it's fine. The findings is based on the data that you have collected. So he said, my 3 hypotheses rejected. I say, it's okay. Rejecting hypothesis is also a kind of findings. He said, but my previous researchers, they found it, accepted, and my case is rejected. What should I do now? I say, you have to find possible answers for it. Go back to the profile of respondents, find out some possible interpretation, or go back to the industry where you conducted your research and find out the real problem and practices, policies are there. Find some kind of spatial characteristics of that industry. Some differences of policies and regulation in your context from other country. That will definitely justify why your findings are different, okay? So that makes it interesting, okay? How do your results in the field relate to the literature? I think you are very convenient, I think, to answer this kind of questions, okay? What aspects of your work are you considering publishing and where? Again, it depends on the institution. Certain institutions do have obligations to publish number of papers, like at UniMAP. The students got to accumulate 10 points for be able to submit for the final Viva Voce. Certain universities publication is not a requirement, okay? But whether you have published or not published, you may not publish everything before coming to the Viva. So they may always ask you whether you will consider publishing, what kind of publishing and where, what kind of journal. Basically, they want to understand your maturity as a researcher. You should know some good journals in your area, okay? And you should know what kind of paper you can come out from your thesis. Next common question is, how do you know the results are accurate? How do you answer that question? How do you know the results are accurate? So you have to refer to the statistical method, okay? You have to refer to the statistical method, right? So we do have ways of accepting and rejecting hypotheses. We do have way of screening the data before we proceed, right? We do have ways of testing validity and reliability. All that we do, finally, before going and testing the hypothesis. Okay, what are the strongest and weakest parts of the thesis? This is very crucial. Students will tell the strongest part and also tell the examiners weakest part of the thesis. Please highlight the strongest part and try to keep low on the weakest part, okay? Don't highlight too much on your weaknesses. Don't, please don't. Unless you are drilled through, in that area. Don't speak about it. But again, you cannot be perfect. There must be some weaknesses of your research. So expose the weaknesses that does not affect the quality of your research. Acceptance. Expose those. But if you expose something that affects the whole thesis, then you are dead lah. You are killing yourself. Don't, please, because the questions could be very tricky, could be very tricky. You say, what are the weakest part of your work? Weakest part, So you know what is the weakest part, but you should not be revealing that. You should not be revealing that. So reveal what is important to reveal. What is, examiners should know, not others think that they should know, okay? So be careful answering that kind of question also. And don't be also like perfect. I got no weaknesses. My thesis is based in the world. Please don't do that. Your thesis is not based in the world. You do have a lot of mistakes, okay? And you have to acknowledge and show some weaknesses, but that weaknesses should be something of acceptance level, okay? In the accepted level. Now, next level of question will be generalizability. Can you generalize your findings? So it's how far do you think you can generalize your work? It's a very common question for social science student. Now you have to go back to your sample, sampling frame and the sample. And based on the findings, you have to answer based on the sample. You cannot simply say, well, it can be generalized. It's not. And also in social science research, do you have probability sampling and non-probability sampling? If you are using probability sampling, then you can generalize it strongly. If you are using non-probability sampling, you cannot really generalize strongly. Be very careful of what kind of sampling. So when question comes of generalizability, always refer to the sampling method that you have adopted. Okay. Now, what lessons can be learned from it by practitioners, policymakers, and other researchers? This is one of the weakest part of most of the students that I have seen, including my students. Okay. In my YouTube channel, I have put up a video, how and what should be written in the contribution of the study. Please watch that video. Okay, I have given a lot of clues and some examples of how contribution of the study should be written. Okay, please watch that video, would be very clear. So you have to have recommendations for practitioners, policymakers, other researchers, for other stakeholders. It could be anyone, the stakeholders, all right? Okay, the next could be, so what question? What are its key recommendation and implication? It's very relevant to the earlier question, all right? Your key recommendations and implications should be spoken very widely and very comprehensively, okay? What are the real world applications of your research? I think Prof. Shukry has touched on it a lot. There must be some application of your work, right, in the world. Could be in an industry, could be in a society, could be an institution, could be the government, could be a country, or could be to the world. So you must be able to tell the world of people, this is the application of my outcome of my research. Okay, you have to be very straight. What are your core achievements? What are the core achievements of your research? You tell the examiner, I have actually completed within 3 years. That's my achievement. I finished within 3 years. Many people even take 5 years, 7 years. No, right? That is not core research achievement. So you have to look at your outcomes. You have to refer back to your research questions and then go to your look at your outcome and see how are you actually contributing in the field of knowledge, in terms of methodology, in terms of context, industry. So 3 areas that you always look at. In terms of knowledge, in terms of method, in terms of context. Could be industry or could be institution, the country or society. All right, I'm coming quite towards the end of it. I do not want to make you bored. All right, the last part comes to contribution. It's normal question. Then the examiner may ask you, would you please summarize your thesis? At the beginning, they may ask you, or could be at the end, summarize your thesis. And you start talking and talking and talking, it doesn't end. It's not like that. Strike, hit. It's like you're going for 10-pin bowling, right? If you hit at the right place, you get a strike, right? That's how it is. So straight go to your contribution of the research. What are you contributing? What is totally new in terms of knowledge or methodology or in terms of practical aspects, okay? What are the main findings of your research? You must know. You don't have to refer to the slide, you don't have to refer to the draft, or you don't have to refer to the notes that you have taken. You should be able to tell immediately what are the main findings of your research. Okay, next question, a bit tricky kind of question that we ask. What would somebody from this field learn from your reading of the thesis? From reading of your thesis that they don't know before? So what can somebody learn from your thesis that was not existed before? Something totally new. Something totally new. Actually, that gives you the PhD. That gives you the PhD, okay? Something totally new. A new knowledge contribution. That question is the question that makes you every PhD candidate sweat unless you are really prepared for it. Find out what is so important in your study that nobody has done it before. Okay, so something totally new. It could come from knowledge, could come from methodology, could come from practical or contextual stage. Okay, so if you fail to show something totally new in terms of knowledge, then you should have a strong contribution, a new methodology. Still you get a PhD. If you cannot show a strong contribution to new knowledge or methodology, then show some strong implications and contribution to the industry. That also gives you PhD, okay? So we look at 3 aspects: new knowledge contribution, new methodology contribution, or new contextual contribution. Either one of it, strong contribution, will entitle you to get a PhD. But usually, the knowledge must be there because it's an academic degree. It is an academic degree. If you have good knowledge contribution, methodology, usually no, most of the cases, and you have some practical contribution, it's good for you to get the PhD title. All right. What did you learn from doing it? So this is some kind of question that we see sometimes from examiners. Through your research, what did you learn by doing the research? So you have to be ready with that. Next kind of question could be about the originality of your research. Be careful. Most of the university, I think we have now Turnitin software to check. And we do have also software like Quillbot, can paraphrase, right? So make sure you all do that before. I always recommend PhD candidates to use two software, Grammarly and Quillbot. Grammarly will help you to proofread, and Quillbot will help you to paraphrase. These two should be always there, okay? And if you see the caption that I put, it say basically somebody wants to be in the paper as author. You say, I'm not interested what is paper all about. What I just want is my name to be there in the paper. So many people are like that, right? You write a paper and he wants you to put his name in the paper. So that kind of thing sometimes we see among the PhD student, you know. I don't care, you know, whatever it is, I just want my PhD degree. It doesn't matter what you say. So it doesn't matter what kind of question you ask me and how I answer. At the end of it, please give me my PhD degree. That kind of attitude also there, which is not correct. Okay, you cannot be begging for it. Rather, you show that you deserve it. You have done the work, you should be given the PhD. Okay. This slide I show in many people. Examiners definitely do not want you to show oranges and bananas in an apple tree. You show apple in an apple tree. That's what you want. But the apple size has to be bigger, or the number of apples should be more, or the size of the apple should be bigger, you know, or the taste of the apple should be different. So that's what we call contribution, something totally new. But we do not want something coming from the sky. So you don't want you to produce oranges or bananas in an apple tree. You show apple tree in an apple tree, but the apple size could be different, the volume could be different, taste could be different, all right? So that's what we want from you. Further work, this is always very common. In order to cover up the weaknesses that you have to highlight what people can do based on your work. Okay, so you have to recommend what researchers, students can do where you stop. Okay, and what kind of hurdles they may face when they do kind of research. Now, publication is a requirement. If you have published, you can always show in a slide. These are my publications. That gives a good point, as a Prof. Shukry has advised you on that. If you have ISI Q1, Q2, Q3 papers, then you are very safe. You have published already good papers from your work. Okay, that will add some value during the session. Okay, the final question, Prof. Shukry has also touched it, and let me touch it also. This is the question that I love to ask, you know. Every session that I chair, this would be my last question as a chairperson. I will ask the student, why should you be given a PhD degree? Please tell me why. And you know, sometimes the answers are very funny, you know. There was one student candidate answered to me like this. He said, Prof, I spent 4 years and every day I study 4 or 5 hours. So I work so hard, you know, 5 years, so I should be given a PhD. So I look at the student and I smile at him, you know. His supervisor was putting his head down. If he's so poor, you know, the student answer like that question, you know. So I told the student, I asked back the student, if somebody is driving a taxi for 30 years and 10 hours a day, should he be given a PhD for driving the taxi? The student say cannot. Then I say, if the taxi driver driving taxi for 30 years cannot be given a PhD, then why should he be given a PhD? Because he spent 4 years and he studies 10 hours or 12 hours, right? So here you have to basically strike on the right place, right? You have to say, because my research findings, outcomes contribute to knowledge in that aspect, my research findings, implications are there for the industry or the society like this. So you have to strike straight to the point, telling what are you contributing. As I said earlier, knowledge contribution, methodology contribution, or the practical, industrial or contextual contribution, all right? So this is what many times, right? Many people is okay. That's what the students say. I was impressed, I was depressed, I was oppressed, I was praised. So I should be given a PhD. Okay, and last one, you can see a girl is replying like, you know, while I was doing PhD, I have to manage my house, I have to manage my relationship, I have to do that, all that, so I did not have really time. Those are not the good answers. You're a full-time student, you are a student. You cannot tell people I was so busy with some other work. I'm sorry, you cannot say that. All right, that doesn't give you the PhD. PhD is given because of either knowledge contribution, methodology contribution, or industrial or practical contributions, all right? All right, so if you have done a very good job, you shouldn't be like that, right? The candidates who did not really do a good job, at the end of it, he'll be like that if he did not answer all the questions probably. And if he did a very good job, this is what he is going to be. That's what you are going to be at the end of the session. And I hope and pray all of you will be like this. At the end of the session, you feel like, I did it, all right? I did it. All right, with that, thank you very much. I would like to end my presentation here, and I will pass the session to Brother Shukry, okay? Brother Shukry or Sister Sonia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aminul, for such a fruitful and stunning presentation. So for now, I would like to pass this session to my friend Sonia Rohena to start the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof, for the wonderful presentations. And really, today we got so many tips regarding the Viva. I hope everyone will have get the chance to how to tackle them, especially to our examiner. Okay, so now we are going to the question answer. So if anyone have the question, you can ask from the Prof, or you can unmute your mic. Thank you.
You can ask questions for both of us, Prof. Shukry and also me. Both of us can respond to your question.
So, so now we are going to give the chance. Okay. Alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clear. Please.
Hello, I'm Adiba. I have two questions. First question is for Prof. Shukry, and second question for both of you. My first question is, why for Prof. Shukry, why in your slide you said that don't over prepare for the Viva? And my second question is, what is the best design for Viva Voce slide presentation?
Okay.
Thank you.
Prof. Shukry, would you mind answering the first question? Can you please?
Okay. Okay. What I meant by over prepare is that I mean, normally when you prepare for your Viva, basically some students or some candidates, they basically over prepare in the sense of they know pretty much everything that need to be everything need to know in order for them to go for the Viva session. It's just that because but they kept thinking that there's something that missing, something that yet to they need to go through, so they become anxious, they become nervous. Sorry. Okay, so that's what I meant by over prepare. I mean that student, if they know they are prepared, they know everything. A day before the Viva, they should relax and maybe have a rest, take a good early sleep that night, so that they can come to the Viva fresh, rather than stay overnight, try to be over prepared for the Viva. That's what I meant by over prepared, because most of the time students, they know what they're doing because they've been working on the subject for many years, but because of their less confident or not confident with themselves, so they tend to study all night with the thesis and everything. So it make it them less fresh when getting into the Viva sessions.
All right, Prof. Thank you. The second question is basically how to prepare the presentation slide for me. As I mentioned earlier, you can see the video I have put in my YouTube channel. Presentation slide for final Viva Voce session. Please watch that video. I have given 3 different samples of the finest PP slide that I have seen among the PhD students. It is there. Please watch that and you will learn that. Thank you very much.
Okay,
We can
thank
proceed
you.
to the, we can proceed to the next question.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me, Prof. Aminul Islam?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. Really, you encourage us. We feel like just we pass our Viva. Thank you for this one. And second one is, I am from numerical side, numerical analysis. So for my Viva, I compare results numerically. But would you suggest me that if I compare some results with experimental results during the answer question session, will it be easy for me or just comparison do with numerical results also?
You are from social science or engineering, brother?
Mathematical.
Mathematical.
Applied mathematics.
All right. I'm not that familiar in your area, so I think Prof. Shukry is from engineering background. He would be more comfortable. But as a layman, for me, I will always prefer to have combination. I'll always prefer to have combination. Beside numerical comparison, I would expect you to have some experimental supporting data. That would be very helpful. Yes.
Thanks, Prof.
Welcome. We can go to the next question. Anyone, please?
Sorry, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Doctor, thank you. It was very helpful for me as a student, but I want to know what is the difference between, you said as a PhD candidate, the PhD candidate should give any new knowledge, any new contribution to knowledge. So I wanted to know what is the difference between this master and PhD. So PhD should give a new knowledge or contextual, as you said, but what about the masters?
Okay. Thank you, Brother Afshar, right? Brother Afshar. For masters and PhD, there is a clear-cut demarcation line in terms of number of words and in terms of robustness of analysis and in terms of scope of coverage, right? So we do have that. So when you enroll into a university program, the university will definitely have clear-cut instructions for masters as well as PhD research. For master's thesis, we do not really want you to contribute any new knowledge. You don't. Master level is where you are just stepping into the world of research. So it is not really warranted. But if you have good bit of elements of new knowledge contribution in the thesis for masters is good. In the master research, what you want to see is that you have followed a good research methodology and then you have some implications in the industry. Some practical contextual contribution should be there. So new knowledge contribution is not really warranted for master thesis. But for PhD, yes, it's an academic degree and the highest academic degree. You must have some kind of new knowledge contribution. Okay, brother?
Thank you very much.
Prof. Shukry, would you like to add on? If you would like to add anything, please.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Prof. Aminul. I mean, in my case, I would say that for masters, basically, you're talking about expansion of current knowledge, extension of current knowledge. I mean, you're working on current knowledge, but you expand it to maybe try to look into some element that maybe, I mean, it's still within the current knowledge, but something that extend your knowledge in of the subject matter. But when it comes to PhD, yeah, we're talking about the new knowledge that hasn't been done or haven't been discussed in great details. That's why it's very important when you do a PhD. It's very important. Many supervisors would encourage, would want their scholars to publish scholar articles, because that would give you the contribution to knowledge that they were talking about. Because if your publications has been published in a very good reputable journals, ISI ranking, and so on and so forth, when is there in the public domain, people can refer to the paper, people can cite the paper, that is another platform that the knowledge has been disseminated to your peers. So that's very important. Of course, you can publish a paper in masters, but of course, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, but in PhD study, most of PhD would require you to publish scholar articles.
Okay, doctor. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can you have
Assalamu alaikum, Prof.
Walaikum salam.
Please, I'm calling from Nigeria.
I know, Nasiru, you always communicate with me in WhatsApp, right?
Yes, that's true, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. The question I'm having here is in the presentation, that is a Viva presentation, you know, what part of the model should we include in the presentation slide?
You know, I prefer not to answer that question because I do have a video in my YouTube channel.
Okay.
How to prepare the presentation slide. I do have, and 5,000 plus view already in 4 months. So a lot of watch, every day few hundred, you know. So go there. Everything is there. How to prepare presentation slide for final Viva Voce.
Okay.
So
then,
yeah.
The other question is the last this thing that I participate, there was this issue about corroborating your results with other researchers. At what point should you include it in your thesis? Is it the research findings, result and finding, or the discussion section?
So your question, if I'm not mistaken, basically you are saying your findings should be collaborated with others. Are you saying that?
Yes, specialists in the field. In cases there are literature that your findings are...
Okay. I think I would answer like that. Prof. Shukry will help me later. Basically, when you are doing a PhD, it is an independent work. It is your work. And you are not collaborating with anyone. But if anybody asks you to collaborate, I think you will have to compare with the previous research that has been undertaken. So we do read papers and we cite them in the literature. So when we write discussion and findings section, that's where we have to relate our findings with the previous researches. I think that's what we mean by collaboration with the previous research.
Yes.
Do you agree with me?
Yes, I agree with you, Prof. I'm grateful.
Does that answer your question?
It has. Thank you very much.
Thank you. He always communicates with me in YouTube as well as in the Facebook from Nigeria. Next question. Yes, please.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, brother. Please.
Thank you. I need an understanding on a particular aspect. That's why I feel let me also if I can get the best answer from you. Actually, I choose a variable which I use as an independent variable. I choose, let's say, for instance, innovation, but I use some dimensions of innovation as Latin variables, 4 sub-dimensions of innovation. Then when I choose it, among the 4 dimensions that I choose, 1 is organizational culture, 2 that is, and 3. 2 is strategy orientation, and then 3 is technology orientation, and then the 4th one is strategic business model. So under this one, the organizational culture has sub-dimension. Okay, technology orientation has sub-dimensions, and then strategy orientation has sub-dimensions. Also, strategic business model has sub-dimensions, but only one. That is the technology orientation does not have sub-dimension based on the previous where it was adopted from. But along the way, I don't want a situation whereby you are in an interview and then the examiner asks you that why are all these ones having sub-dimension while this one does not have?
Okay.
And then the second question, the second question is that out of the variable that I picked, one of them again, among the sub-dimensions of one of the dimensions of the innovation, that is strategic business model, has from the previous literature has innovation again appearing in that one again as part of it, of the sub-dimension. How do one address this issue, Prof?
Okay, the first one is basically you are saying that few independent variable got dimension and one variable got no dimension. As long as you are adopting and you have the right citation, there's no problem at all. It's not necessary that every variable must have dimensions, okay? And also, those variable has dimension. You are not going to test different hypotheses based on every dimension. Am I right? You are
Yes,
going to test based on the variable, okay? So you are just testing the relationship between independent, dependent. You are not testing relationship between dimension and dependent. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
so it's not a problem at all. As long as you have a citation, there should not be a problem. It is not necessary that every variable should have dimension. But what is important for you to understand is when you develop or design questionnaire, either you adopt it or adopt it, make sure if you have dimension, every dimension is covered in the questionnaire.
Okay.
Every dimension has questions. Questions to measure every dimension. That one you have to be very careful. What you do many times when I attend the Viva session is students instruments which is critically scrutinized, okay, by all examiners.
Okay.
We see we have 3 dimensions. Then we ask the students, okay, how many items you have under this variable? We say I got 9 questions. Which question refer to which dimension? And they cannot tell you. They cannot show it to us. So you have to be very careful on that. Okay. So this is one of the trickiest point. I always see students get caught during the Viva session. If you have dimension, you must have items in the questionnaire. And you must know which items are measuring which dimension. Okay. That's number 1. Okay. Number 2, in case of 2 different variable having similar dimension.
Yes.
So that's what we are saying.
So the other one is subdimension.
Understood.
Not a dimension. Yeah, it's a dimension of subdimension that appear again. That's right.
So possibly if it appears again for subdimension from one variable, you can drop it. Okay. Otherwise you are repeating the same thing because you need to have items for every dimension. So for one variable, you can drop it, arguing that because this is covered in another variable. So you can drop it from this variable.
Okay, so I can drop that one.
Okay. Yeah. So did I answer your questions, both questions?
Yeah. Actually,
I think the question he was saying on the dimension, there's another variable with answering same dimension of the.
Hello.
Yeah. So it's not about from different dimension, from same dimension. Yeah, from same. But the way Prof answered is as if you are talking about another dimension. It is
no, it's from the same dimension actually.
Yeah,
from the same
dimension.
So since you have repeating, so from one case you drop it.
Okay.
And maintain in another one. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Prof.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you have next question, please?
Greetings, Prof.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Prof, for your impactful lecture. I really appreciate you. Now, Prof, please, may I ask, what is the major difference between proposal defense and Viva?
Okay. Which country are you from? Only Leo, right?
I'm in Malaysia presently. In UTM for my PhD program.
But which country do you come from?
I'm from Nigeria.
Nigeria, okay.
Yeah.
So your question is, what is the difference between proposal defense and final?
Yes.
Proposal defense, basically, we defend the proposal. So if it's social science, it goes up to chapter 3, Introduction, Literature Review and Research Methodology. That's it. But final Viva is the overall, everything from chapter 1 until chapter 5. That's what you look at. Introduction, Literature Review, Methodology, then your findings, and finally your conclusion recommendation.
So if I may ask again, what is the minimum slides for Viva?
Okay, that's why I said always this question I don't prefer to answer because I have 2 videos in my YouTube channel. One is to prepare presentation slide for proposal defense, and I have another video presentation slide for final Viva session. Please watch these 2 videos. I do not want to answer your question. I'm sorry.
Okay, Prof. Okay.
I put effort and put it there. So you got to just sit down and watch it. It's there. So go and watch it. The clear guidelines are given. Okay?
Okay, Prof. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Hello.
Yes. Shall we have next question? Yes.
Okay, Prof. Yes, Prof. We have some question from our live stream.
Please go ahead, please.
So I think now we have to choose. The question. Okay. Now someone is asking that if I explain the weakness or tackle or deal with it during my study, how to answer this question?
You are breaking up. Your internet was not good. Can you repeat the question? We couldn't really listen you. We couldn't really listen to your question. Can you repeat again?
Hello. Prof,
Yeah,
now
you are breaking up. So
hello.
can you? Yeah, you can
Okay,
hear
Prof,
now.
sure.
Yeah.
Prof, someone asked from our live stream that if I explain the weakness of my thesis, but the examiner asked why I do not tackle or deal with it during my study, so how to answer to this question?
I think that I spoke a lot. I said, do not expose your weaknesses a lot. Try to hide it. And but definitely there will be some smaller weaknesses there, which we only got to know after completion of a study, which you cannot do it. Okay, so that's very clear. Do not expose your weaknesses. Expose only smaller ones, and you should have a ready-made answers with you. So when examiners say, why didn't you tackle them during the study, then you must have some kind of answer for it. So possibly you can say that because when you did the literature review, you couldn't really detect it or diagnose it when you started. When you collected the data, you couldn't really find the kind of data needed. You didn't have access to data. Some kind of justification. Answer has to be there. You got to be ready with it. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Prof, yeah. Our next question is what the difference between practical contribution and practical implication?
Okay, it's the same. I would say it's the same. When it comes to practical, we do not say contribution. We always say implication. Knowledge, new knowledge contribution, methodological contribution. But when it comes to practical, we do not really say contribution. We say implications. What are the implications of your findings to the industry or to the practice, okay, to policymakers and all that? Right, Prof. Shukry, would you like to add on if you would like to? Is Prof. Shukry still there?
Yeah, I'm agree with you. I think that's correct. That's about right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we can proceed to next question.
Okay, Prof.
Yeah.
Okay, Prof. Sure. Okay, the next question is what if we see mistakes in the presentation or contents right before Viva? So will it be all right if we mention this during Viva since we cannot change the draft that was already been submitted?
Yes, you can. A common practice is if you really detect or diagnose serious mistakes in your draft, make sure you do the correction, print it out, loose sheets, and bring few copies with you. So when the session starts, ask the chairman for permission. Ask the chairman, would you allow me? Or you can hand it over to the chairman and say, Prof, I have detected some mistakes in my thesis, I have corrected, and this is the corrected copy. That would be very good. You should do that. You should do that because you have already detected it. You know there are problems, and you have the solution. So you can do the correction and you print it out and submit it to the panel during the session. You can always do that, right, Prof. Shukry?
Yeah. I mean, you can do that. This is you're talking about the TC itself, isn't it? So another way is of course some mistake is unintended, but some mistake basically we are supervisors, but your co-supervisor, yourself, we all humans. Sometimes we make mistakes. Supervisors they have all other commitments, teaching, administrative, other commitments. So sometimes they overlook. That's why for PhD scholars, it's very important for you to publish your paper. You publish your paper as attending conferences, or you publish your paper in the good scholarly journals. So you will get all these comments. So it's not just about publication itself. You get all these comments, these recommendations by the experts from the journals. So you will get your paper, even though the paper is rejected. Even the paper is rejected, you will get the comments. That comments would give you indication the error or the things that you need to focus on or need to correct before you can submit the thesis. So basically, you kind of have a safety net. If you have a paper accepted in a good journal, for example, a very good Q1 journal, for example, then if you go for a Viva, for example, you have a safety net, meaning that you have submit your work to other experts to verify. So then it's very unlikely that you have a error if your paper has been accepted. But of course, like, as I said, there are some also although the paper is sorry, even though it's some papers also been published. Of course, there are some errors. And if there's errors, then as Prof Aminul mentioned earlier, you can always prepare a loose sheet that you can make it present during the Viva session.
Miss Sonia, I think there is a question on.
Okay, Prof. Actually, we have the lots of the question, but I think last two question. Okay, maybe this one will help.
Prof, please, I have another question.
Yeah. Okay. Can
Prof, please, I want you to shed more light on this question I'm about to ask. I was told that sometimes during your defense that you have to master some references. Please, can you shed more light on this?
The citation that we have in your draft, the references list, it varies. Some students have 300, 400, some students even have 700. So like I was sharing a session, I think last month, and I asked the student, did you read all 700 papers? So he just looked at me, he did not. So I said, why did you cite so many and put in the reference list? There is nothing to be feeling proud of by making the list longer. Why should you? So the minimum requirement for a PhD thesis is 200. 200 is the requirement. So if you meet that requirement, you are fine. So why should you be giving 500, 600 where you never read that paper? So what you did? You read a paper, and at the end of that paper, you have 30, 40 citations. You take them all and put it inside. And the original paper you didn't read, you take something from another paper without reading that original paper, the cost referencing, you take the cost citation and you put it as main citation. That is not right.
Prof, during your presentation, they said you have to master some references too, because
I'm coming to answer that question. Basically, that's what I'm coming into that.
Okay, Prof.
So when you are doing a presentation or answering question, during the question answer session, definitely the key studies you must remember. Citation should be on your lips. The key studies. It could be about, I would say, about 40 papers. About 40 papers, citation should be on your lips, especially connecting to your issues and research problem. Okay, so independent, dependent variable. So those key papers, you should know from your heart. And even if any question on any paper, you can always tell them, okay, you can refer to this page number and find it. Okay, somebody was talking. Sorry.
No? Okay, thank you, sister. Now
Sonia, your line is breaking up also.
we are going to another question, Prof. Question is that actually,
Hello.
Prof, my net, I think it's now okay, Prof.
Yeah, okay.
Hello.
Hello, Assalamualaikum.
Hello. Okay, Walaikum Salam.
Hear me? I am Ila. I'm from UM. Prof, thank you so much for the sharing session. I wanted to ask this question for you. Is it, to be on the safe side, is it enough to just have one theory for PhD level, or should I have more theory to back up my study?
Okay, good question. Very good question. And it's a common question. By right, you can always have one theory, underpinning theory. That's what you call in research, right? Underpinning theory. One theory, if it is adequate enough to underpin your theoretical framework, one theory is enough. If you have that, from that theory, you might do some validating or verifying or nullifying or extending. There are many kind of testing out there which you have to do, testing effectiveness and all that. But the theoretical framework that you have drawn, if you find one theory does not cover the full framework, including independent moderating, mediating, and dependent, then you have to have supporting theories. So the dominant theory would be this underpinning theories, and you may have 1, 2 supporting theory. All right, Sister Ila?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, no more question from the audience. Thank you so much. Thank you. No question. Now we have also many questions from other participants from the live streaming. Okay. Hello, Prof. Okay, now we have asking the last 2 questions from our audience side. Okay, in chapter 2. Hello.
We couldn't listen.
Hello?
We couldn't hear you, so you have to speak again. Okay, say it again.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, Prof. There was someone question asked that what are the common questions asked in chapter 2?
I think I have that in my slide. Literature review, I have 2 slides on it. So those questions are already there. We'll share the slide with you in the YouTube channel.
Okay.
Please refer to the 2 slides I have on the research literature review. Okay.
Okay. Okay, Prof. The next question is how do you measure students' failure at Viva, or what are those factors that can make a student fail at Viva?
Okay, there are a number of reasons are there. Let me share a few, and then I will ask Prof. Shukry also share his understanding on it. Number 1, when a student, the main reason, the student failed to defend his work. The student did not do the job, somebody has done it. He couldn't defend it. Okay, so this is the number 1 reason. Number 2, may have analyzed it totally wrong. So the student require totally new analysis. So he failed. Number 3, his data collection instrument is wrong, or the sampling is totally wrong. So he may have to collect new data. So new data collection, new analysis, when it is required, then you fail. You will go for resubmission. When we sit, after the presentation and question answer session for a moderation meeting, the candidate is not there. Supervisors are also most of the time not there. So that's what we look at, whether to give you resubmission or fail or major correction or minor correction. So we look at all that. How did the student defend? Number 1 question. Number 2, how was his sampling and data collection? Does it need require new data collection? The instrument was right. Number 4 would be, is the analysis robust enough for a PhD level? Okay, so those kind of things are very common, and definitely the final one is your contribution. Are you contributing anything? Because if you are not contributing anything, that is a master level research. That's not a PhD level research. I know many cases whereby the student has defended the final Viva Voce in a PhD level, and after the Viva, the student has given a choice. You can get a master degree, not PhD. I know some of my close friends, they are not given PhD. The university told them, if you want, we can give you a master degree, because they cannot find any new contribution. So, so there are a number of reasons are there. So possibly, Prof. Shukry, you'd like to add on? I have given 4 reasons that would come on mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think Prof. Aminul have covered pretty much everything that normally would result in failure in Viva session. Basically, the first one, in most cases, I mean, failure due to the Viva is very rare occurrence. Very, very rare. That's one thing you need to know. It's very rare. But it does happen. It does happen. But most of like Prof mentioned earlier, one of the major reasons is plagiarism. If the work has been found plagiarized from other publications or other theses that have been submitted to other institutions, for example, there is a major problems. There is major fraud. It can be considered fraud. So it definitely is a failure. In any institution, there is a failure. Others, as Prof mentioned, yeah, I mean, contributions, talking about contribution, if the students or the candidates couldn't defend his or her work at all, he couldn't answer how he devised the hypothesis, how he devised the method, how he analyzed the data, totally. So that would would cause a failure in the Viva. But otherwise, if there are some problem in terms of answering the questions, or if the examiners find the work is good, but maybe the defense wasn't great, so the worst it may got to major revisions or major so the student need to either revive or maybe need to do sometimes 6 to 9 months to correct the thesis and to resubmit the of course with the further verification of the external examiner. But the most is plagiarism, as well as the if the student couldn't defend the work at all.
Sonia, any more question, or how would you like to do the session here?
Okay, thank you. I there is more than 500 questions. So maybe we will cover later. We can email them their question answer of that questions. Okay. So now I think we have to going to be the closing side. So thank you so much, Prof. Aminul. Thank you so much, Prof. Shukry, for answering to all the questions, for the great presentation.
Please, Sonia.
And it was a pleasure to.
Sorry,
yeah?
Sonia, please, apart from the YouTube channel, how can we get the slide? So we really want to go through the slide without videoing the site. So we don't know how maybe you can plead with the prof to share the slide in our mails.
You know, actually, Sonia is going to have a lot of works because she has to print out so many certificates. It's easy because within after that session, within 10 minutes, we will upload the slide in our YouTube channel. It's very easy to get. Just go to Platform for Research and Development in the YouTube channel, Platform for Research Development. And under this video, common question raised, under this video, the slide should be uploaded. So it's very easy to get. Please get it from there. Ms. Sonia, please continue. Ms. Sonia, you can continue, please.
I will send some regards from you so much, Prof. Okay, first of all, I would like to share the regards I want to give you to both of the Prof. Aminul and Prof. Shukry. From our live stream, there's so many the participants attending our session from the Maldives, from the USA, and from the Nigeria, from the Bangladesh. So all the participants say that thank you very much for the wonderful session, and they give us so many blessings also. So I think hope today, I think because of the time constraint, we cannot you all the questions, so maybe we can do the next series with the common question in the next year. So stay tuned with us, okay? And I'm really sorry if we cannot you bring your question in front of the prof, but later maybe we will do another series. So just wait for our another series. So soon we will be announced. So stay tuned with us with Prof. Aminul, because we have so many sessions will announce with Prof. Aminul, and keep subscribe the Prof. Aminul channel, the platform for the research and the development, and also keep will be follow the JSA TV, Instagram, and then all the webinars in the UTHM. Okay, so thank you so much, Prof, our Prof. Aminul, Prof. Shukry. Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. So I'm really appreciate of you all you giving us the time and to join our session and make it is a very fruitful and successful. Thank you so much. So have a great day. Okay, on the behalf of all the CGS and the JSA and all of the co-organizers and our presenters, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, and we wish
Walaikum salam. Thank you very much,
Thank you very much,
Thank
Prof.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Waiting for next series. We are waiting.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Very much, Prof.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much, Prof.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much.
We are waiting for next series, Prof. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
We are waiting for 2.0.
We'll do one more session. We'll do one more session.
Yeah.
Keep
Inshallah,
subscribing
inshallah.
channel.
Thank you,
Yes, yes,
Sonia.
thank you,
Prof.
thank you,
Thank you,
thank
Prof.
Guys, don't forget
Thank
to
you,
subscribe.
everyone.
Assalamualaikum.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, so keep stay tuned with us. Keep follow us. So we will be
Alright.
sharing all your every webinar. We update you. Thank you.
Alright. Thank you, Amin. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.
Prof. Shukry, can you please share your slide with me in WhatsApp? Then we'll upload it now. Brother Rashid, my one.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sir Rashid, Sir Maruf, Sister Anisa, and also the Shabri, our president. And thank you so much, our technical team.
Sonia, your work is start now, so you have to give the certificates to so many people.
Prof, we already auto-generated. I think more than
Okay,
350 people already get the their certificate. But now I keep telling that you can go to the Prof Aminul channel. You will get that. But I think they cannot go to that description. So maybe later I can post in the Telegram group.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you. You did a wonderful job, Anissa. Thank you very much, Anissa, Saburi. Thank you so much.
Very much, Doctor.
Also, Ida. Ida is not here. I don't see her.
The email, actually, can I speak something regarding the e-certificate?
Yes, sure.
So the e-certificate is auto-generated based on what you fill in your feedback form. So make sure when you fill in the feedback form, your email is correctly spelled and also your name.
They are not there. They are not there already. Only now in the YouTube we
So
have
for
100.
others who are, yeah, I saw someone say in the chat. So for those who are still here, so make sure you fill in correctly the feedback form because it is based on what you written inside the feedback form.
Yes,
So so the cert is auto-generate.
We still have 160 in the YouTube.
Yeah.
Still in Zoom.
So for those maybe there's a problem, so can contact us later.
Yes. For Miss Sonia, there are a few complaints. Not complaint. Few contacted me. They did not get the certificate for the last webinar. So I say, okay, maybe you can give me the name. I will pass it to Miss Sonia, and she will give you the cert. Some of them are really interested.
Actually, Prof, the more than 200 people are still remaining, but we have so many work, Prof. You know.
Yes.
Our research and also my health was not okay, so that's why I couldn't.
Okay. Don't worry. Miss Sonia's internet is very bad today, so you should be punished for that.
Make it, but maybe today I will do that, inshallah. Yeah.
Your internet is very bad.
Prof,
today.
I did 3 times packages. Prof, I did 3 times packages. I don't know.
You should be punished for that because it's a so big event and your internet is troubling. So we will make some punishment for you later, like Brother Shubidi.
Sure, Prof. Thank you, Rashid sir. You did well done, and Nisa's sister, also Shabri. Thank you so much, my whole team. Thank you so much, Prof Aminul team, our technical team.
So it is always the case in our webinar. Participants do not want to leave; they want to stay until they can. So I think in YouTube still we have 156, and here still we got 100 in Zoom, and I always feel quite bad of leaving the screen and still seeing them there. Okay. So those of you have not filled in the feedback form, please fill in now. Still you can fill in. And I think we will have another session on the same topic probably in 1 or 2 months' time. And the video is going to be there in the YouTube. And Miss Sonia is going to defend her PhD thesis soon. So
yes, inshallah.
I think those people attending your session, they will have some good prayer for you. So you will have blessings and you will have